of Texas. Texas voters have returned him to the office 3 times. He's here today to talk about making America more energy independent. Please welcome Governor Rick Perry.
Distinct honor to be here with this august crowd and particularly in front of the, well, let's just say, a very mature and largest of the public forums in America, the Commonwealth Club. After you all have been leasing space, I understand, for almost 100 years, and earlier this year you broke ground on a new facility, a new building. So I'm thinking that your former president, Shirley Temple Black, would be very proud. And it's a beautiful city. I have now on a number of times personally confirmed that the coldest winter I ever went through was a summer in San Francisco. You all have some beautiful weather. And Texans should come here in August often. But I love your climate. I love the creative culture of the city. This area, for that matter, Silicon Valley, and the innovative technology that we see coming out of that part of our country. Texas actively competes with California for technology jobs, but we also compete in practically every sector of the economy, and I happen to think that competition is really healthy. I think it is when you get down to it, America needs both California and Texas to be incredibly competitive, incredibly successful. We need that to pull us out of this economy. As a matter of fact, this is the slowest recovery we've had in 75 years. And we need California and we need Texas to both be leading the charge. We together represent some 20% of the nation's population, and over 70% of our nation's border with Mexico. These two states have in common. And what happens in Texas and what happens in California matters to the rest of this country. I root for this state. I know sometimes I get a bit of a rap that I only come to California to recruit businesses to come back to Texas. But the fact is, well, I have done that. But I root for this state. I root for California to succeed. Just like I was rooting for America's pony, California Chrome, to win the Triple Crown. I was rooting for that pony. But I also know there's a difference in political culture here that I'm not necessarily used to. And therefore there is very different fiscal and regulatory policies that we deal with. And I don't come here to criticize the California model. What I want to do this evening is just to speak to the experience of my home state, and then I'll let you come to your own conclusion about which one of those economic models works best. And as Mr. Dalton shared with you, one of the most important policy discussions that we face, one of the most important issues that we face in this state and at the national level is energy policy. And I think if you ask any Republican, as a matter of fact, I think if you ask any Democrat, they would agree that it is a good idea for America to be less dependent on foreign oil. It is not in our national or our economic interest to place our fate in the hands of unstable governments in the Middle East or in Venezuela, for that matter, who could blockade energy resources and cripple the world's economy at any given time. Personally, I'm not opposed to all foreign oil. I'm only opposed to that comes from these unstable countries. I wholeheartedly support the import of oil from Canada, for instance. And the fact is, I wish the President of the United States would stop blocking the Keystone Pipeline so that we can create the 40,000 jobs that would entail. See, the President says that he is for the development of our energy resources on this continent. He just opposes drilling it, permitting it, and transporting it. In Texas, we're known for the development of carbon-based fuels, and that makes some sense. We're the state that's known for Spindletop, the beginning of the 20th century as it was developed. But our approach is not slanted only to the development of traditional fuel sources. We have an all-of-the-above approach to energy development. For instance, when we deregulated the electricity market, we started a boom in Texas in the renewable energy sector. Today, the nation's leading developer of wind energy is not one of those progressive states on the East Coast or the West Coast. The number one wind energy producing state in the nation is along the Gulf Coast. It's in Texas. Texas has more than 12,000 megawatts of installed wind energy capacity, more than all but 5 countries. We built a new network of transmission lines to bring that energy from the areas of the state where it is best produced, which is up in the panhandle of Texas, to the population centers over in the eastern side of our state. And our state is friendly to the development of all forms of energy, from wind and solar to clean coal to natural gas and to nuclear for that matter. And at the turn of this century, in the year 2000, our state produced about 20% of the nation's oil. Today, that figure is 36%. We produced 23% of the natural gas then. Today, it's 29%. We also lead the nation in the production of electricity. And I might add, we have our own electric grid that serves over 85% of the state, which allows us to keep out of the federal FERC jurisdiction. These statistics are probably not shocking to anybody because Texas has a reputation as a leader in the energy industry. But what is especially exciting to me and to our companies is that they're transforming energy exploration with new technology. When Greg and I have the opportunity to sit here and take questions and discuss this in a little more free-flowing manner, I think you'll be able to see just the fascinating things that are going on in the energy sector and the revolution that's going on with technology and innovation. And in no place is it more apparent than the shale revolution that has absolutely changed the energy industry. Shale drilling techniques have doubled oil production in the last 3 years. Natural gas production is up 52% in the last 14 years. There are towns in South Texas that have had incredible renaissance. Well, there was nothing to revive in some of these South Texas towns. So they're doing swimmingly well, as I refer to it, because they're swimming in revenues that are coming in. Their families are reinvesting royalties. There are state budget. Our state budget is in a fairly substantial surplus position. And the shale production is a great example of what the private sector faces as well as a challenge, and also it's really fascinating to see the changes that have been going on in our state. And I'm here to say that one day that same thing can happen in this state with the Monterey Shell. But it's up to you. When a recent study determined the oil reserves in the Monterey Shell would be harder to reach because of some geology and then an estimation by one of the federal agencies. Some of the activists pounced on that as a validation that carbon-based fuel exploration just was not the way to go. And as I tell people, I said, listen, I've seen this movie before. That's the same thing that they said decades ago about the Barnett Shale up in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. The safe drilling techniques are and have been developed. Natural gas in those fields are now being accessed. And the same thing can and I think will happen, and that harder to reach oil reserves in the Monterey Shale. Given the time, given the technology, given the money, the private sector always rises to the challenge. And I also don't believe you have to choose between economic prosperity and protection of our environment. Those are not mutually exclusive. Since the start of the century, since the start of the 21st century in Texas, nitrogen oxide emissions have been cut by 62% in Texas. Ozone emissions are down by 23%, which is substantially better than the national average. And we've done that despite the fastest growing economy and the fastest growing population in the country. In fact, in the last 14 years, 37% of all the private sector new jobs created in America were created in Texas. I want you to think about that for just a second. 1 out of 12 individuals in this country lives in Texas. Over that 14-year period of time, 3 out of every 8 jobs were created in that state. And we were also the first state to pass a law requiring the disclosure of all the chemicals used in hydraulic fracturing. But the fact is, we're not going to shut down this safe procedure and over some unsupported claims of environmental risk. There is no study that has shown that fracking contaminates the water supply. I happen to think that these decisions need to be left to best science practices, and which none of makes the case against fracking. We happen to care about our environment a great deal in the state of Texas. 95% of that state is privately held. Those individuals have every incentive to take care of the air that we breathe and the water that we drink and the land that we farm or we work. And I happen to know that people in this state care about their natural resources as well, and you should. You have some of the most beautiful natural resources in the world. You have amazing beauty along the coastal region. You have extraordinary forest lands. You have wonderful parks. And I might add, you have the finest wine in the world. So it's up to you to determine the course of this state, to decide whether you live in a regulatory state or one that emphasizes freedom and growth, whether you tap into your energy potential and develop only certain forms of clean energy. Those decisions should be yours. But I do know this. The fastest way to rev up the economy is for America to produce all forms of energy. Hundreds of thousands of jobs can be created if we unleash energy exploration across this country energy innovation. It's the quickest way to make our anemic economy very powerful. To me, the central issue in this country today is how are we going to get Americans back to work? It's how do we create the environment so that men and women can take care of their families? The unemployment rate that's been provided by the Department of Labor, it doesn't include the number of discouraged workers who stopped looking for work. You know, when you include those individuals, I refer to them as the uncounted Americans, the grim picture of our economy becomes a bit clearer. Too many Americans are not just unemployed, but they're underemployed, working part-time jobs when they need full-time employment. And over the last 5 years, all of the economic metrics are headed in the wrong direction. More Americans are out of work, more Americans in poverty, more Americans on food stamps. Family incomes are actually down. Our credit's been downgraded because our national debt has skyrocketed. Small businesses are overregulated. Corporations are overtaxed, and too many of them have moved overseas. Banks are spending more time on compliance with these Dodd-Frank regulations than they are spending time lending money. Pension plans are over-leveraged. Cities from Stockton to Detroit are going bankrupt. And because of all of this, the American dream is in jeopardy. Families can't get ahead. Parents spend more time working and less time with their children. And our children are under assault. Our culture too often preaches, it's all about me. And America can't continue on this course because the bills always come due.